Is the principal question, right? Why would I want to own small or mid-cap stocks if I think the economy is about to take a serious downturn?
Right. Typically, you wouldn't want to own small caps into a downturn, but we think this time it's a different backdrop for a couple of reasons. For one, they're already discounting the recession. So when you look at valuation multiples, the forward PE ratio of the Russell 2000 is trading at, lowest levels it's ever traded relative to the large cap index. That we've hardly ever seen historically. The only other time small caps were this relatively cheap versus large caps was in, 99 to 2001. And, if you had bought small caps then, that ended up being a really great decade to own them relative to large caps. They were up like 100% over the next 7 to 8 years. Large caps were flat. So, valuations today are very compelling. The size segment on a standalone basis is cheap. Not the same is true of large caps. And, if you look at what happened in the 70s to early 80s, which was another backdrop, the Fed was trying to tame high inflation. Small caps were the best performing asset class from the mid 70s to the early 80s. They did well even during downturns during that period. So, given the parallels to today, we think this high segment's well positioned.
I just feel like cheap can obviously get cheaper. And they may be, if they're pricing in, a recession. I'm not necessarily sure they're pricing in a more dramatic downturn or a steeper recession.
I mean, I do think they are. When you look at, one of the most correlated indicators with equities and in particular small caps, the ISM, when you look at the relationship between what small caps are pricing in and the ISM index, they're pricing in about 35 on the ISM. The forward PE multiple of the Russell is trading, below COVID levels. It's trading similar to global financial crisis levels. The earnings decline that multiples would be suggesting for small caps is, a global financial crisis-like earnings decline. So I think a pretty severe recession may actually be in the numbers at this point. And then when you think about, fundamentally what's going on, we think CapEx is going to remain more resilient during this recession. Corporates have underinvested for decades. You have a lot of reasons companies are spending on CapEx, reshoring, which we're seeing evidence of, ESG-related spending. So small caps typically benefit from CapEx cycles in the U.S. And they've had better pricing power than large caps, surprisingly, in environments where inflation's remained sticky. So, we do see more downside risk to U.S. equities overall near term, given our view that we will have a mild U.S. recession. But we do think that large caps may actually have more downside risk than small caps near term. And then once the market bottoms, that obviously tends to be the best time to own small caps in that recovery.
Utilities, consumer staples, two areas that, you like. To those who say, and I know that we've, on the program brought this point up already, that's a great defensive place to hide out in the storm thus far, but now they're pricey. But why do I still want to be there?
So I think, within small caps, you want to focus on a mix of some cyclical and defensive areas and also focus on quality. So, stocks that have earnings rather than no earnings. That's been one of the reasons the S&P 600 small cap index has held up much better than the Russell 2000. It has, less exposure to non-profitable companies and biotech and areas like that. So we think for defensive sectors rather than healthcare within small caps, utilities and staples look well positioned. Obviously, these sectors do tend to get pricier heading into a downturn, but we also think energy, for a value sector, still looks very attractive within small caps, still very inexpensive, under-owned, holds up well in these backdrops. So, financial also screens well in our small cap work. Obviously the macro environment's challenging, but it's actually become much higher quality than it was heading into prior downturns.